this session is now going to be about the climate endowment model, which is going to be facilitated by Jochen. As I mentioned before, this is a US funding model that Johan's team is going to bring in order to facilitate private capital to reduce the negative effects of climate change. So, Jochen, over to you.
If you could turn the beamer on, that would be great. Up, the slides, and the clicker. Great. Do you want to join me, Lydia and Patrick, already on the panel? No? Okay, I start and then you join me. Okay, good. Someone said we should call ourselves not impact investors, but super return investors. So at Super Return, I gave this wonderful presentation. I'll whiz it through, but there's some facts I just want you to stick with. First of all, if you're an investor now, we're in a paradise. It took about 150 years to get 1 billion people into the middle class. Now there'll be another 1 billion people in the middle class within 10 years. So if you're selling underwear, earrings, widgets, whatever you're selling, it's going to be huge. You're going to have a big party. Life is wonderful. You can make lots of money, get very, very rich very quick. The only problem is it looks like this in Beijing these days, so not so much fun. Worse, as we heard from Mr. Rockstrom, we are seriously on the path of major increases of water levels, for example, as just one tipping point. If the top of the iceberg in Greenland starts melting beyond a certain level, we come to lower temperature levels, and the rest of the iceberg melts and gets away. What does an iceberg look like? This is a picture that Thomas Henningsen sent me. This is the iceberg that broke off Antarctica recently. It was swimming on the sea, so what happens if an iceberg melts to sea levels? They go down. Because ice, when it expands, right? When it melts, it goes down. The iceberg that swims in the sea and melts reduces ice levels. But if ice sits on land, like this one on Manhattan, and falls into the sea, we have a big splash and higher sea levels. On Greenland alone, that's 7 meters. On Antarctica, that's 60 meters. And in total, that's what it looks like. Here's Berlin. It's a beach party. So that's later tonight. We have the beach party. So this, if you're an asset manager and you don't realize that if you're a long-term investor and we don't stop climate change, guess where the biggest risks are? It's Miami, it's Shanghai, it's London, and so forth. You don't want to be invested there. This is what climate risk looks like. It also means you've got huge amounts of refugees. We're not talking about 1 million refugees. First of all, refugees are wonderful. The first set of refugees caused the great industrial revolution in Germany. Next wave, the Wirtschaftswunder. We love them. But we're talking about 1.5 billion displaced people by the middle of the century if we do not act quickly. But we're positive. First of all, why are we in this mess? We're in this mess because today in the European Union, if I emit a ton of CO2, some people think I emit 175 euros worth of damage. And under European trading system, I can buy the right to dump trash in front of your yard for 25 euros. Moreover, looking at the subsidies today, on average, Edenhofer estimates of PIC that we are in fact paying people to cause this damage. Yeah? So we are causing 130 euros of damage. 60 is health costs, so you get asthma, allergies, and cancer because of CO2 emissions. That's the health costs. So if you don't care about the climate, it's fake. 70 is climate cost, 130. In the EU today, I can buy it for 25, and that's only half of the economy. The other half of the economy gets it for free. So this is the mess we're in. So it's a very basic moral issue. Just like there shouldn't be slavery, just like women should be allowed to vote, just as there should be rule of law, the price of carbon should reflect the externality. And if our politicians can't say that, they should be fired, and they're being fired. I'm very grateful for that. And you please help me get it done quicker. Now here's the good news. This is the Desert Tech project that said, with this little spot of land here in the desert, you could power all of the European Union. And with this spec, you could power the whole world. And our friend Klaas Helmke here wrote his PhD on decentralized power. It turns out you can do this today with profits around the world. The reason is, when we started here in Berlin in 2000 to make our first solar investment, inspired by Hermann Scheer, the cost of solar in Berlin was 70 cents per kilowatt hour. In Dubai, which is a bit more sunny, it was 40 cents per kilowatt hour or dollar per megawatt hour, 400. Now what happened all of this time, it was the German citizens who year after year after year through their electricity bills subsidized these high prices. So it was suicide for anybody in the economic right mind to invest here because you're dependent on subsidies. And then the breakthrough happened. And Al Gore says it's like when you jump on a lake and it's frozen. It goes bang, it's very, very hard. But when it's no longer frozen, you can swap into the sea. We are now in a situation where in Dubai and in Texas and in Mexico, at 2 cents per kilowatt hour, you can produce solar. And in Berlin, at 4 cents per kilowatt hour. And the Saudis and the Arabs in the Emirates were the smartest to calculate. They'd be sorry at $4 a barrel. Only if you can produce oil at $4 a barrel can you compete with solar power. There's no one on earth who can lift oil at $4 a barrel. In Russia, it's 30, the North Sea is 60, the other oil is 150. So it makes no more economic sense. And when this message came through, the divest movement exploded. I got my diploma from Desmond Tutu, who said, "Thank you, Brown University, for having convinced your endowment to divest from apartheid doing businesses." 80% of the index. They excluded 80% of the companies in the index. Ellen Dorsey, who is the leader of the Divest Invest movement globally, has written a doctorate on the apartheid divestment movement. And she says, we will divest from fossil fuels because morally wrong, because it makes no economic sense. And by the way, you'll be sued if you don't do it. And this Ellen Dorsey has now brought to us a number of endowments from the US who said, usually we have to spend 5% of our endowment every year to keep our status. We've come up many who now say, we are in spend down mode. In the next 5 years, we will spend all of our endowment, who's been around for generations, because if we don't spend every penny now in the next 5 years, climate change will not stop and there will be no future. There's nobody to pass it along. So Ellen Dorsey has been speaking to us here before, and she told us, and she said, let's push aggressively before Paris to get commitments from 50 billion to 150 billion. Then this data came out and we exploded to 6 trillion committed to divest today. Of course, you use oil for transport. So this is the beautiful back of Klaas Helmke. In German we say, schöne Rücken können auch entzücken. He's passing the Pope his electric car for his 80th birthday. This electric car is a Nissan Leaf. It costs you 20,000 euros. It saves you 1,000 euros per year compared to gasoline. And using the battery for storage, you can make another 1,000 euros. So electric cars pay for themselves. Give me 3 or 4 more years, and I will hand you the key to the Nissan Leaf for free on condition that you plug it in. Like you get your mobile phone for free if you buy the contract. So will there be a Mercedes-Benz? Will there be a BMW? Will there be a Volkswagen? Has there ever been a company that survived such an industrial revolution? No. Amazingly, none of the horse breeders became oil diggers. That's not amazing. Whip makers did not become piston makers. No. But amazingly, none of the carriage makers became a car maker. And therefore, the chance for BMW or another old company to survive is near zero. And all of the members of the Dow Jones Index #1 were wiped out by the end of the last industrial revolution. So if you are investing and you have any sense, you will not invest in the status quo, you'll invest in the future champions. And these are, of course, companies that are not listed yet. They'll come up yet, and they will hopefully be found by Fortum Ventures and other smart people to invest in the Sustainable Energy Fund of the World Economic Forum. What is the green revolution? I think it's a nexus of transport, fintech, circular economy, education is missing, energy, and all these wonderful things are happening. We just short a few trillion euros. Why should we care? Theodor Heuss said that Europe is built on 3 mounts: the Acropolis for democracy, the capital for rule of law, and Golgotha, I always get Golgotha in Jerusalem, for love thy neighbor, care, compassion, caring for others. If we want to defend these values, we can't sit back and do nothing. The British became a world power because they led the first industrial revolution. They missed the second one. They still built steam engines in 1930. And the Russians, Americans took over. Who's taking over today? How many of you took electric car here today? How many electric bikes? How many electric scooters? All right, that's pretty 5%, okay? In China, it's every 5th person, okay? 250 million Chinese went to work this morning on electric, 100% electric machine. So if we want to survive with our values, we have to move very, very fast. We are following, in Europe, the Kodak model. We invent the digital camera, we discard it, we go bankrupt. We invent the energy transition, we cap it, we're going bankrupt. That's where we're headed, my friends. Let's go forward. How do we do it? We take technologies from Europe and bring it to the world because we consume much less energy than the rest of the world. And we have a small finance gap to close that was mentioned by Espen earlier, 2% of GDP. What's 2% of GDP? That's $83 a month for a European. Can you pay that? Invest that with a 15x return? Yes, you can. And what's the cost of $1,000 a year? It's about a fake handbag, okay? One fake handbag less. When I showed that to the Pope, he said, good point, let's divest. And the Pope divested. All right, now, there are 200 trillion in global financial assets. There are 29 trillion of members of Stephanie's amazing group. Amazing, yeah? She's gotten to 15% of world financial assets that want to deal with climate change. There's 16 trillion in cash just on your cash accounts in the EU. 16 trillion. Just 6% of our money on our accounts is enough to stop climate change immediately, because €1 trillion in equity is needed. As far as I understand, my colleague Patrick and Lydia, they know how to do that. So I turn to the two of you to please tell us how you're going to do it. Lydia from Cambridge Associates, an expert in endowment management, and Patrick, previously with the Abu Dhabi Investment Council. Please join me on this panel.